The word mula, one of its meanings is root, like the root of a tree, the roots of plants. So those are called mula. And then by extension, the word mula, it's also used in the suttas to refer to the roots of action. So that the Buddha speaks about greed, hatred, delusion as being the unwholesome roots, non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion as being the kusala mula, the wholesome roots. And so mula, because it's from the root that the tree or the plant develops, so mula takes on an extended meaning as being the cause. And so mula can be explained as the root cause of things. And then there's another meaning of mula, which is the first, the beginning, because things begin from their cause. And so the word mula comes to be then extended to the origin or beginning of things. And so I think when the compilers of the Pali Canon put the Mūlapariyāya Sutta at the beginning of the Majjhima Nikaya, they did so, maybe one of the underlying ideas was that this is the beginning of the middle-length discourses. So it's the mula, the root of all of the other discourses. And I think they also put this sutta first because it's, as I say, it's an extremely profound and extremely important sutta. And way back many years ago, when I was just a beginning student of Pali, one of the first projects that I undertook was to translate that sutta together with its commentary and passages from the sub-commentary. And so I put them together into a little book that was published in Sri Lanka. And if one wants to examine the sutta in detail together with its commentarial explanation, you can obtain a copy. I'm not selling them here. But you can obtain a copy. It's published by the Buddhist Publication Society in Sri Lanka, but their North American agent is called Pariyatti. So if you search for Pariyatti, Pariyatti is a Pali word that means the learning of the scriptures. And so this Buddhist publishing company or Buddhist book distribution company took that word as their name. So they call it pariyatti.com, or it could be .org, I'm not sure. Excuse me? The book is called The Discourse on the Root of Existence, available in North America from Pariyatti. Just a moment. Hello? Yes, Pariyatti, I just gave a plug for you, and any profits can be channeled to my personal bank account. Okay, so the word mula, as I was explaining, means root. Then the word pariyatti is used in the ancient suttas to indicate a discourse by the Buddha. I don't know how the word has come to acquire that meaning. Literally, it comes from pari is a prefix which means around. Pariyatti. And ya means to go. So literally, it's a going around, sort of almost like a revolution or revolving. Maybe the idea is that a discourse goes around a topic or turns a topic around in order to explain it. But anyway, that is how we find the word pariyatti applied to quite a number of the discourses of the Buddha. Like the famous so-called fire sermon is in Pali, Adita Pariyaya. Literally it's the pariyaya, the exposition on Adita is blazing. Okay, so let us look at the sutta. Okay, so the sutta begins when the Buddha was living at a place called Ukatta, seldom mentioned in the text, in a grove at the root of a royal sal tree. Then he addresses the monks, calls their attention, and he says, I shall teach you a discourse on the root of all things, of all dhammas. Yeah, so what the expression that the Buddha uses here is, we just have to put the word sabba dhamma. Sabba dhamma Mūlapariyāya. So the Buddha himself gives the title to this discourse. And the word Dhamma here refers to, it's not Dhamma in the sense of teaching, but it's Dhamma in the sense of phenomena, concrete things. And so even the title sort of underscores the importance of the sutta, since in this discourse the Buddha is getting to the root of things, going down to the root. And what is going to unfold in the sutta, as we'll see, I call this an analysis of the cognitive process, that is the way of mental functioning of four types of people. There's the first type of person, which is called the worldling, or the common person. Then the way of thinking, the cognitive process of the noble disciple who is on the path. The cognitive process of the arahant, the disciple arahant. And then fourth is the cognitive process of the Buddha, the Tathāgata. Okay, so the Buddha begins, like the most developed section, or the most elaborated, is the one on the ordinary person. And so here we have, the Buddha says, "Hear, O monks, an untaught ordinary person who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who has no regard for," this is done in the actually originally in the 1950s by Venerable Nyanamoli, so he uses true men, but now I would use the gender-neutral term, and I would not use true, but rather good persons. No regard for the good persons and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, perceives earth as earth. So even in this statement, there's quite a bit to be unpacked. And the key term here is the word translated ordinary person, which in Pali is putujana. Yeah, the word putu, this is a compound of the word putu and the word jana. The word jana means a person, and the word putu in Pali can represent either of two Vedic Sanskrit words. One is pritu, which means many, and the other is pritak, which means separate or distinct. You see, in Pali, we don't have this sound, this r, which they have in Sanskrit. So r is here turns into the u, and we don't have endings like this. And so here, the uk also could turn into a u. And so putu could mean either many or distinct. So putujana is literally either the many person, or that's the common person, or pritak jana, the one who is separate. In Sinhala, they use pritagjana, Sinhalese. Prutagjana. Yeah, so it seems the Sinhalese has taken this as the original. Yeah. So, literally, putujana, it's the many person or the distinct person. The many person in the sense of the multitude. And the commentaries say the distinct person, because this is a person who is distinct from the noble ones. In my own translation, I've been rendering the word putujana as the worldling, because it means or suggests the person who is engaged, involved in the enjoyments of the world without any insight or understanding. And so we see the way this person is described. First, as he's described as untaught, uninstructed. That is, this type of person hasn't learned the teaching. And so he has no regard for the noble ones, the Aryans. Then he's unskilled, a kovido, in their teaching, which means he doesn't have any kind of understanding or insight into the teaching, and undisciplined or untrained in their teaching. That is, he doesn't have any experience of undertaking the practice of the teaching of the noble ones. Okay, then after description of the worldling, it says that he perceives earth as earth. You don't mind if I write the Pali? Because there are a number of Pali students here, and sometimes it's interesting to look at the actual expressions in the original. Okay, so the word patavi means earth, and then if you just look down at the following three sections, you will see water, fire, and air. So you can see that this is the first part of this section is being elaborated in terms of what are called the four great elements. And so we begin with the earth, which is the element that serves as the foundation for the others. And we have He perceives earth. Here the direct object is pataving. That's the, in Pali terminology, grammar, we call it the accusative case. And he perceives it patavito. The to ending, it's an ablative ending, which has the sense here of perceiving something as something. Like if one sees form, material form is impermanent, anicchang rupang, aniccato pasati. So aniccato as impermanent. And now I conjecture, if you look at the table that I gave out, everybody got a copy, I assume, that I suppose that there is a primary cognition which isn't actually mentioned in the sutta, and this is simply perceiving, in this case, perceiving earth, perceiving any object. But then, in this case, the case of the worldling is followed, he perceives earth as earth. So this seems, sort of, to us it seems normal and natural. Of course, if I hold up a book, you perceive it as a book. If I drink tea, I perceive it as tea. But what the commentary says is that what occurs here is that a subtle distortion is entering into the perception of earth. That in the case of the worldling, like there are these deep defilements of the deep ignorance which sort of infiltrates into the process of cognition, so that the worldling doesn't go on to understand the object as it really is, but even at the base level of perception, a subtle distortion occurs in the act of perception, whereby the worldling grasps upon, I call this grasping upon the concrete appearance of the object and takes it as being something which is solid and substantial. Not yet thinking about it in that way, but that disposition towards the idea of substance or solidity or substantial existence already sort of infiltrates and pervades and controls the act of perception. So already some kind of tendency or inclination towards a distortion, towards misconception has already started, sprouted within the act of perception. So the commentary explains this in terms of the texts. Other texts speak about 4 distortions of perception. And these are perceiving what is impermanent to be permanent, perceiving what is dukkha, unsatisfactory, to be pleasurable, a source of happiness, perceiving what is non-self to be self, and perceiving what is impure to be pure or beautiful. Okay, so in the first stage, the worldling has this distorted perception, grasping upon the concrete appearance of the object, grasping upon that appearance of the object as being something concrete and substantial. Okay, then from perception, we come into the next statement. And I don't like these additions in brackets. I didn't want to include them, this is my confession, but my teacher at the time, Venerable Nyanaponika, the German monk, said, oh, you should include those phrases in brackets so people can understand more clearly. But I think the explanation should belong in the notes, that one should translate the text exactly according to the wording of the text. And so if we just take the wording of the text, we'll leave out those words in brackets. Having perceived earth as earth, he conceives earth, he conceives in earth, he conceives from earth, he conceives earth to be mine. Okay, so now with this word that's translated conceives, we're moving beyond bare perception. So the word here translated as conceives is manyati, which is from the root man, which means something like to think. But manyati, according to the commentary, well, according to many other texts as well, is not simply what we call clear, objective, evaluative thinking, but rather it is distorted thinking, thinking that is influenced by the mental defilements in such a way that it misconstrues the object. If I could read from my own introduction to the discourse on the root, I said that, okay, the word conceiving manyana comes from the root man, to think, but what is indicated by this word is not simple discursive thinking. The word manyana signifies a different, more developed type of thinking, one that is unwholesome and always involves a wrong grasp of the object. Manyana is distorted thinking, thinking that comes under the domination of defiled predispositions and imputes to its object properties or relational implications grounded not in the thing itself, but in the constructive activity of the subjective imagination. Manyana is the tendency of thought to misconstrue its object, building upon the distorted perception to apprehend the object in a mode contrary to its actual nature. Okay, so that is the fundamental meaning of the word manyana, or in this case the verb manyati. And the commentaries explain that what is involved in manyati, conceiving, is thought that is influenced by three associated mental defilements. These are craving, conceit, and wrong view. And so in this case we have the worldling conceives the earth, thinks of it under the influence or in ways that even to a subtle degree are influenced by craving, conceit, and wrong view. And we note that he can conceive in relation to the earth. The text mentions 3 different ways, which are governed by different cases in the Pali grammar. The first is the direct conceiving, that is, conceiving what's expressed as he conceives the earth. The second involves the locative case, the case of location. He conceives in the earth, in relation to the earth, or as existing in the earth. And then the third case is the ablative case, which indicates apart from or separate from. So he conceives apart from the earth, as separate from the earth. And I think, though I said what is in brackets, I would not put in the text itself, but I think those words in brackets are actually correct. That what's going on is that he is conceiving himself as in some way identical with the earth, taking the earth, could be the earth element of the body, to be myself. Or conceiving in earth, that's taking himself to exist in some way within the earth. Not that he's buried in the ground, but taking the self to exist within, say, within this body made up of the 4 elements. And then conceiving apart from the earth is taking himself, the real self, to be some kind of self-entity existing separate from and apart from all the material elements. And maybe some of you who have been attending classes over the years will recognize here some correspondence with another scheme that we've explained many times, or several times. What scheme is that? Which uses grammatical forms similar to this. Also explained in terms of the uninstructed worldling. Who said that? Good, very good, but there's a specific passage. What is that passage on? A particular term for that. Maybe my question is not phrased clearly enough. Anybody want to take a guess? Bowie? You've come across that passage. You have to speak what? Right, okay, right, correct. It's the 20 kinds of Sakkaya Ditthi, of identity view, where we have also the uninstructed worldling considers form as the self, considers the self as possessing form, considers the self as in form, considers form as in the self. And so we could set up a correspondence here. So we have, he conceives earth. This would be like perceiving form as the self. So taking earth as the self. He conceives in earth. That is like taking the, he conceives in earth. That is like taking the self to exist in form. He conceives apart from earth. That is like, or we might say that that corresponds to taking form to exist within the self. It's not quite identical, a little different, but maybe similar. Okay, then we have the fourth one. He conceives earth to be mine. This is like taking the self to possess form. Okay, so we have 4 ways of distorted thinking in relation to the earth element. Ways of thinking governed by craving, by conceit, by views, and which take, in the case of the view, one takes oneself either to be identical with earth, to exist within the earth, to exist apart from the earth, or one takes the self to possess the earth, to exercise ownership over earth. We could see on the expanded scale how this works out when we have things like nationalism and imperialism. Like, this is my country. Our country is the greatest. We are the exceptional nation, the special, shining exemplar for the rest of the world. Or the imperial project, even soft imperialism. That's our sphere of influence. Russians, get off, not yours. Those are our territories. No exploiting, no searching for natural resources, and that land, that strip of land belongs to us. Okay, so he conceives earth to be mine. And then the last one, he delights in earth. Pataving abhinandati. Okay, so this is abhinandati. It's a verb based on the root nun. From which we get a noun nandi. Sometimes nandati is used in a positive sense, like delighting in the Dhamma. Taking delight in the Dhamma. But often it's used almost as a synonym or as indicative of craving, that is delight, taking worldly delight in the object. We find this word nandi used when the Buddha is explaining the second noble truth. He says that the second noble truth is tanha, which is nandi raga sahagata. So it's craving, which is associated with nandi, with delight, and with raga, with lust or passion. And so here, after misconceiving, misconstruing the earth, taking it to be mine, then the worldling enjoys or takes delight, a worldly delight, delight motivated by craving or by conceit in the earth element. Okay, so then the Buddha takes now he's gone from perception to conceiving to delight. Then he raises the question, why is that? Why does all of this take place? And then he gives the answer himself. because he has not fully understood it, I say. Okay, so the key word here is, I guess I can erase this. Apariññāta, which is the is the negation. And so we have the word pariññāta, which comes from the prefix pari, which gives a sense of fullness, and ñāta, which means known. So this is not fully known, not fully understood. And then the commentary gives interesting explanation of this idea of full understanding. It raises the question, what is meant by fully understanding something? And it explains in terms of 3 kinds of full understanding. Like this is, in a sense, you could say, the task in the development of insight or vipassana. You know, people say vipassana means just being present with what exists, just simply being mindful of the present. But actually the mindfulness of the present is intended to bring insight into the nature of phenomena. And the insight involves 3 stages, 3 deepening stages. The first stage, I won't write the Pali technical words, but it's ñāta pariñña. Full understanding of the known. This is one investigates with the focused, mindful, concentrated mind. One investigates the nature of phenomena to determine exactly what those phenomena are. That is form, that is feeling, that is perception. Those are the volitional activities. That is consciousness. And so it's defining the 5 aggregates, or nama-rupa, mentality, materiality, in terms of their distinct characteristics, and then observing their conditions. What are the conditions for the arising of form, the arising of feeling, the arising of perception, the arising of the volitional activities, the arising of consciousness? So observing or discerning the characteristics of mental and physical phenomena along with their conditions. All of that comes under the full understanding of the known. Okay, then the next is called, I translate it, it's in Pali, tirana pariñña, which I translate full understanding through examination, or just full understanding through scrutinization, scrutinizing the phenomena in terms of the 3 characteristics. That is, after seeing the distinct characteristics, the special or distinctive characteristics of the 5 aggregates, now one perceives them in terms of the 3 universal or general characteristics, that all these conditioned phenomena are impermanent, arising and passing away. All of these phenomena are unsatisfactory or defective, they're dukkha, and all of these phenomena are anatta, non-self. And then the third, that's the second level of full understanding. Then the third level of full understanding is called Pahana Parinya, which is full understanding through abandoning. So it means as one's insight becomes deeper and sharper, then one starts to abandon all kinds of distorted perceptions and views about the nature of phenomena. And as one abandons the distorted perceptions and views, one is abandoning the craving and attachment to the conditioned phenomena. Okay, so in this case, the Buddha says, because he has not fully understood it, because the worldling has not fully understood the earth element in terms of these three types of full understanding. He has not seen the earth element clearly, simply as that material phenomena with the characteristic of hardness or solidity. He has not perceived, discerned the earth element as impermanent, unsatisfactory, non-self, and has not discarded or abandoned the wrong views about the earth element. Okay, maybe at this point I should ask whether there are any questions. This is a very dense passage, as you can see. Please take the mobile microphone.
To refresh my memory, Bhante, X equals any of the 24 bases. Now, the 24 bases consist of what? 6 times 4?
Yeah. The 24 bases, we're going to come to them.
Oh, okay.
Those are all of the other things in terms of which this process is applied.
Okay.
The earth element is just the first of the 24.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, it was at the top of the list. I like to go the top first.
Does somebody else have a question? Wait, take the wireless microphone.
In front of Hindu toilets, there's often a Nandi bull. There's a statue of a bull sitting or kneeling in front of the temple, and it's usually, quite elaborately done, and it's called a Nandi bowl.
Yeah.
Now, is that the same? It's the same term. Does it mean lustful or?
It's the same word. I don't think it's intended in the sense of lustful, but more in the sense of delightful.
Huh. Okay.
Maybe because the Indians, they love the cows because the cows provide. Well, of course, the bull doesn't provide milk, but the bull provides cows, and the cows provide milk and butter and yogurt and ghee.
Yeah, well, it's also that the killing of a cow is considered more important than killing of a person who hasn't been twice born.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that it gets inserted into the human hierarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I just thought of when you mentioned Hinduism, and that is that this particular pattern that's developed in this passage, conceiving earth, conceiving in earth, conceiving from earth, this echoes in some way a kind of passage that one finds in some of the Upanishads, the sacred texts of Hinduism, or Brahmanism, in which it said that the self is that which abides as the all, the self is that which abides in the all, the self abides apart from the all. And so it seems that the Buddha is picking up that kind of pattern, grammatical pattern, and then using it in the opposite way from which the Upanishads are using it. The Upanishads take this to be a way of describing the absolute self, whereas the Buddha uses that pattern to undermine all conceptions or beliefs in a self. Somebody else have a question? Okay, then we'll move on. Now we're moving into the other terms in what I call the 24 bases. So as I said, the earth element is the first, and now that same pattern is applied to the other objects. So we don't have to take each one in detail, but just go through them. So we have water, fire, and air. So you see, when you take that in connection with earth, so here we have the 4 material elements. So that will represent the side of matter. Okay, then the next we have the Pali word is Bhuta, which means beings, living beings. But since many of the items to follow are also types of living beings, these would be the gods and other divine beings. So I think beings here has to be taken to represent beings in the lower realms of existence rather than the celestial realms. So you could, perhaps human beings, the earth-dwelling deities, and the beings in the lower realms of existence. The commentary the commentary says, here the word beings signifies only living beings below the heaven of the 4 great kings. The heaven of the 4 great kings is the lowest of the 6 sense desire realm heavens. And so below the heaven of the 4 great kings, we have all other types of living beings. The earth-dwelling deities, sky-dwelling deities, human beings, animals, and then the beings in the hell realms, and the spirits, the pretas, or afflicted spirits. Okay, then we have the next is he perceives the gods as gods. These are the devas. So this we could probably take as the deities dwelling in the 6 desire